Brian, I had to do it. After all these years, you made me. I bought, actually, my wife bought for me a plant to eat your plant.
I saw the foliage and I say faux FAUX. It's lovely. I love it. I think you're going to enjoy being in the woods.
Yes, yes, but I do need to buy a few lemons to hang from the
Of
branches.
course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Or maybe at Christmas time, you'll send me some leftover decorations from
Well, you
your.
can see I've still got the little that red spot
Oh,
is a light bulb.
oh, that is a
So
light.
I've still got my Christmas lights on. They're just turned off.
Of course, you're supposed to keep your Christmas lights up all year round. Everybody knows this. All right. So, should we talk about anything to do with Tesla or Elon Musk or those kinds of things?
I've heard of all of those topics, Randy.
Okay. Well, apparently were having some kind of a conversation the other day about the truck charging, the nationwide system of truck chargers that are being put in as part of the IRA, I think, or was it the Infrastructure Act? I don't remember which one.
I don't remember which one. So there's a couple great things going on. They're working on it in Canada. They're working on it in the US. And then since that video, we've seen that a new grant program is being rolled out in California. And California is a good target for it because we know all of the locations of the ports and the warehouses.
Yeah.
And maybe we can call that first mile deliveries because from the port to the warehouse is a perfect use case. We know how long the routes are. They are almost all sub 100 miles. Um, and you don't necessarily need to have highway charging to make all those work. You can have depots in areas where land is not outrageously expensive or the land already exists, like at the ports, and you can get it going in that regard. And it's very expensive to do because people think, well, yeah, but a charger, what could it cost? 100 grand, maybe? Right. That's not the expense. It's getting the power to the location. We were talking about um, school buses. There's a discussion I saw about school buses because uh, Bluebird has just made their 2000th, 200,000th school bus. Let me take a look here. 2000th electric school bus.
Mhm.
And people are saying, well, these should be absolutely everywhere. They're a perfect use case.
Yeah.
How hard could it be to put power into a school bus depot? And the answer is hard. It's difficult because I guarantee you that depot does not have enough juice to charge 50, 100 vehicles
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
at once, even if
Yeah.
they're only charging at the same speed as a car, which would, take them longer per mile to juice up. And yes, you do have the entire overnight to get it done. It's a lot of juice, my friend.
Yeah, so I happen to live on all of those places that you were just talking about. I sit equidistance between the 215, the 60, and the 15, right in the middle of that corridor.
Yeah.
And so those are the big, uh, all of the trucks in Southern California rumble past about 6 miles from my home on their way to these various what do you call it?
Distribution.
Distribution centers. Yeah, and they're, as you point out, from Long Beach Harbor to Riverside, Temecula, et cetera. We're talking about under 100 miles, well under 100 miles, 60, 70 miles from Long Beach Harbor to Riverside and all the same thing. It's about 65, 70 miles. I've made the trip many, many times. And so therefore, being able to put in a charging stations at the docks and other charging stations in the area around all of these distribution centers, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. I would also like to see the boring tunnel. I've said this for well over maybe 2 years. Boring tunnels need to be going from the docks to Riverside. It's the most obvious thing in the world to do to reduce not only pollution, but also to reduce the brake dust and everything else, road noise, the whole 9 yards. And the right of ways are already secured. You can build the darn things right under the existing freeways. So, yeah,
Well, let's talk a little bit real quick about the semis, because here's what I'm looking forward to. The problems we have with semis are they are loud. Well, an electric one is not. The Jake braking that you hear from miles away that is disallowed within city limits but happens anyway will be a thing of the past. Using power when you're going downhill instead of recuperating it, that should become a thing of the past. And what frustrations remain after that? Well, brake dust, it is mitigated by regenerative braking. And then we get to our last little bit of fun, which is crazy, dangerous, overspeed, and otherwise distracted semi drivers going too fast, going um, you know, all of that can end with first driver assistance and then later with full autonomy, because a semi doesn't need to go super fast if the human behind the wheel isn't there or doesn't have a motivation to do it.
Right.
So that will increase efficiency because, drag increases dramatically the faster you go. If all semis were going the speed limit, and for that matter, platooning so that they are close to each other, and they can then benefit from the little bit of slipstream they get, and cars can know to get around them. You won't have to deal with them blocking, and then they won't go slow going up hills, which is another frustration on a highway that only has 2 lanes, and you're stuck in a long grade, and one semi is going 45 miles an hour because he's carrying a substantial load. The other semis going 55 miles an hour are trying to pass him, and all traffic backs up. All of those things will become things of the past, and I'm here for it.
You're right. You're right. Okay, so let's go back to the charging systems. Do we know? Maybe these are things you don't even know. We didn't have this conversation. Do we know? You did mention, I think, in your video that some of these at least are Tesla superchargers, but are we going to get into another problem of differential methods of charging, different kinds of equipment being used, and therefore not being able to bring different kinds of trucks into the same charging stations?
So yes, the short answer is yes. I have yet to see what everyone is using, but it is reasonable to assume that Tesla once again is going their own direction. I know I've seen what the big charging cable connectors look like for example, Caterpillar, and they're like a fire hose. They're tremendously big. But their use case is they know what their use case is. It's very specific. So you've got, like, for example, heavy mining equipment, and they need to be able to charge very, very quickly. So what they've got is a setup where they can plug in 1 or 2 cables,
Mm.
charge from a single or twice as fast, depending on what they have available and what their needs are. Um, Tesla Semi does not appear to be using that. And I don't know what all the other brands are using. I'd be very surprised if more than 1 or 2 of them are using a standard in common.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And then do we know anything about the other companies that are winning some of these state bids? Are they the same players who've been involved all along, who have made such terrible charging facilities? Do we know anything?
I don't know any of those answers.
Okay.
I don't know, because there's the question of equipment, but there's also the question of contractors. And if you look at the contractors who've been winning these state bids, the bids at the state level for passenger charging, they're almost entirely companies I've never heard of.
Interesting. All right. Okay. And then what about changing subjects? We have Norway announcing, well, not announcing, I guess the information came out today that Norway's electric cars have set a new world record, 94% market share in August. Tesla's Model Y with 18.8% of the market. This is almost perfection for the future, in my opinion. My numbers have always been that Tesla would eventually have 20% market share of whatever is going to be out there. That could be not only on cars, but trucks and semis and the whole 9 yards. If we just had a nice 20% of all of it, that would be a totally acceptable number, especially when you add in, I don't know, things like Robotaxi and Optimus as the real moneymakers. But so why is Norway so far ahead? Why isn't the rest of Europe at least equaling Norway. Why is even California, with extremely expensive gasoline and apparently a real zest for EVs, why isn't California somewhere closer to Norway by now?
So there's a few things going on in the Scandinavian countries. First is they'd set aggressive targets and real targets, not ones that we're going to kind of head toward and then kind of back off from. And then the manufacturers and everyone just kind of counts on the fact that, well, we'll be able to weather this storm if we do a bad enough job because they can't put us out of business. Norway doesn't make cars, they buy cars. And as a result, they're not looking to tax to death all the imports because there's no domestic production to protect. So they'll take a car from anyone. So you've got a better buying opportunity there. Their incentives, and I'm not sure if it was Norway. I think it's Norway as well. What they have is very high import taxes on all cars except EVs, which gives EVs a huge price advantage. They've got access to hydro and other and offshore wind, affordable power. The power is not an issue. So they've got the other big thing they have is they don't have a philosophy in their heads where they need 1,000 miles of range. Uh, they're more realistic about their driving needs, and they understand that what they have works. It is a smaller country, so putting in a charging network from end to end was not as difficult as it would be in a big sprawling, three-dimensional mess as the US. But what they also don't have is it's not a political hot button. Nobody in Norway is saying, well, I'm not going to buy an electric car because I'm not XYZ, whatever it is. Because I don't, because one person in Austin is too liberal or too conservative. That's not part of the calculus. I'm sure there are people in Norway who disagree with Elon's politics. I'm sure there are people everywhere who disagree with someone's politics. That's just how people are. But it doesn't appear to be hurting them. And if you are one of those people in Norway who will just never buy a Tesla, that's great. There's plenty of options in that market for you to choose from.
Yeah, so you make a very, very good point. I hadn't thought I'm sure I have thought about it over time that in California, we don't really have the option of buying any of the Chinese. We don't have the option of buying a BYD. We don't have an option of buying a NIO. Not that anybody would, but we don't. We have the option of buying the domestic, like for instance, the Hyundai vehicles that are made here, but the ones that are imported would have the high tariffs on them. So that could be something that, in addition, so then that would be a problem in California in particular, where the interest in the EVs is extremely high. Charging structure is very, very good, and gasoline is expensive. I've maintained for a long time that the gasoline being so inexpensive in the Midwest is maybe the number one reason that we're not seeing the Midwest adopt as quickly as Europe or California.
All good points. Getting cars from Europe to from the manufacturing bases in Europe to Norway is very easy. Getting the same cars here is a much longer process. Hyundai has their new factory. It's about to begin deliveries. For that matter, we've got Polestar, who's got their new factory that just opened in the Southeast. And yes, I agree with you that gas prices are low in the US compared to other developed nations. You look at and the Midwest, I don't remember who I was talking with on X, but somebody was saying, well, yeah, gas prices are high. If you just figure an average of $3 a gallon, and I was like, an average of three? I don't remember the last time I saw a number lower than three that would bring my average in that direction on the West Coast.
No,
350 seems like a bargain.
yes.
And I only know what gas prices are because I went out of my way to look the other day. I have very little idea on those trends. So yeah, it's going to be cheap gas is an obstacle. And every time we've seen this over and over for decades, every time gas prices go up, SUV sales go down, and then the gas prices come back down and people go, boy, that big old Chevy Tahoe is looking pretty good right about now. It's comfy. It's a big couch on wheels. and that's great. And then 6 months later, gas prices go back up, and oh, what have I done?
Yes. All right. Well, let's also talk for a minute about Consumer Reports. Now, I have said before, maybe even with you on the channel, that I don't have any respect at all for Consumer Reports. Partially, I think that they might or might not be biased, but partially, I think it's because the amount of resources necessary to actually do what they do is astronomical. Again, I was in the padlock business. I cut my teeth in the padlock business 50 years ago. And so I learned everything I could possibly know about padlocks. I actually became published in Locksmith Ledger, published in Hardware Age, etc., about small security devices like padlocks, because I decided to become an expert. When Consumer Reports came out with their article on small security devices, it was completely wrong. I mean, it was just, and you could have asked any locksmith and they would have told you it was completely wrong. So I don't have a lot of respect for them in general, but they probably spend most of their money, probably the vast majority of their resources, I have to think, goes into their automotive reporting. And yet their automotive reporting seemingly over the years to me also seems to be really bad. But you did quite a little analysis of it the other day. I wonder if you could summarize what your findings were.
So you will see a headline that says, "Oh, Consumer Report says Tesla's the worst car." And then a month later, you'll see one that says it's the best car. You'll see it's the most expensive, and then you'll see it's the cheapest. You'll see it's the least reliable and the most reliable. Are they lying? No, they're playing the statistics game. You can tell any story you want with the statistics. So if you look at the one that says it's the most unreliable used car, what they're saying is if you go back 10 years to the 2012 to 2014 Model S, those have reliability issues. And then they say, but by the way, the Model Y is the best car of the year. And that's because the Model Y, like any car that you sell in outrageous volume, gets really dialed in. That's why other winners on that list are like the Camry.
Right.
They sell a lot of Camrys. They sell a lot of RAV4s. So they can, just by changing the question, you can get a different answer. The cost of ownership is lower. But then they say, oh, but if you look at the S and X, you'll find that the cost of ownership isn't as low. It's like, well, right, because it's a different car. It's more expensive to buy in the first place. It's I don't think they factored it in, but if you buy a Plaid, you're absolutely going to chew through tires. That's not because it's heavy. That's because it's a Plaid. It's like it's like a Hellcat. You're not going to get more than 10, 15,000 miles on those tires if you're driving it like the Hellcat it is. So yeah, Consumer Reports, would I call them, I wouldn't call them dishonest. I would say that everything they say has truth if you read the whole thing. Most people don't go past the headline. I would say their motivation is to keep eyeballs on it, to maintain their relevance so they can maintain their budget, so they can continue doing these things. And sometimes that's at odds with painting a complete picture.
We had an article out about a week ago, maybe it was more than a week ago, maybe it was a long time. I can't remember now, but there was a Car and Driver article on the Cybertruck that was particularly dismissive of the Cybertruck, and the reading of that one seemed to have been intentionally disparaging without. Do you remember this one?
No,
No.
but it's but I understand how you reach those kinds of conclusions. If you you were saying that when you read this report regarding a topic you knew a lot about, locks, that it became clear to you how little they knew. And I found this to be true with news generally.
Yeah.
When a local news story is unfolding and the networks come in to cover it, you get home and you watch the coverage and you shake your head because, boy, you guys, first of all, those weren't the things that the witnesses actually said. I mean, you're changing a whole bunch of things. When I went to court to give a witness impact statement, a victim impact statement recently, I shared with a prosecutor some things that I'd read online in the paper that concerned me about the case. And they said, Oh, yeah. Don't put any weight in those. That's just the local newspaper trying to get a story out in time. It's not necessarily based in reality. And that was comforting.
Yeah, well, when it comes to witness reporting and even the kind of reporting that we're talking about, you may be aware of something called the stadium theory.
Hmm.
Stadium
No.
theory says that if you're at the Rose Bowl and it's USC versus UCLA, and there's a very important play, and you watch that slow-mo over and over and over again, everybody wearing the blue and gold will see it one way, and
Mhm.
everybody wearing the purple and gold will see it the other way.
It's amazing that the instant replay doesn't always provide the answer you would expect. You'd expect it to be cut and dry, clear, definitive. Well,
Yes.
was his foot there? Tough to say.
Exactly right. All right. Well, I think we've covered some very important subject matters for today. I think we'll leave it there. People that do not currently have a subscription, it's free. You can subscribe. You can subscribe on X. It costs you money to Brian White. But if you'd like to subscribe to him for free, you can do that on YouTube. So just go over to his YouTube channel, push the subscribe button. And then while you're there, he'd probably give you some kind of information in his description that would send you over to Patreon or send you over here or send you over there where you could possibly support him in those places as well.
I
And
would mention that I'm going to be in Vancouver, BC this coming weekend for the Electrify Everything Expo, formerly called Fully Charged. I am a backup speaker should anyone need a place filled. But I was not originally on the speaker registry because I had another event that was supposed to be going on this weekend that ended up being moved.
so does that
So
mean that while you're there, you're going to have to be going beep, beep, beep,
it means I have to leave my ringer on, which I'm not excited about.
because you're a backup speaker?
Ah, for
I,
crying out loud,
oh,
Randy.
oh.
You should sign off.
All right. All right. Then in that case, it's been great talking to you.